Hey there, Gacha Gang. Kawaii50 back with another FGO video. Y'all have been asking me for this, so it is time to talk about one of the most well-written characters in all of Fate Grand Order. One of my personal favorite characters, honestly tied up there with BB. That's right, it is Melt. We are going over all aspects of Melt's kit, her card setup, her skills, her stats, craft essences, command codes, allies, the whole 9 yards. So, this video helps you out. Be sure to go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more future FGO and video game content. Alright, I know y'all been waiting. I won't delay you any longer. Time to talk Melt. Melt's got a quick Arts Buster deck with an 8-hit quick Noble Phantasm, which means she has the ability to quick Brave Chain, and the large number of hits on both her Noble Phantasm as well as her cards themselves means she's going to do a pretty good job at generating those critical stars. Looking at the rest of Melt's stats, her 13,402 HP is solid, although not the best, and a lot of her class affinities as an alter ego make that both a boon as well as a detriment. Really depends on who you send her out against. As far as her attack, 11,692 is very good when it comes to pretty much any servant, but you've got to keep in mind that with alter ego damage multipliers, you are getting 1.5 times damage, not 2 times damage. So when you're hitting enemies for effectiveness, well, it might hit a little less hard, but we've got ways around that. NP per hit at a 0.92% is honestly really good in my opinion. You're going to be getting a lot more NP off of Melt's quick cards other than her arts card, and I have honestly had times where I have almost, if not completely with some lucky crits, completely recharge her Noble Phantasm after use. It is just absolutely great. Star Absorption is your general standard Saber class Star Absorption, so she might get some of her crit stars taken away. Keep that in mind. Melt's first skill is Crime Ballet rank A. This gives her 2 instances of evade that lasts over 3 turns, and also grants her between 5 and 15 critical stars. If you max this out, it ends up being on a relatively short 5-turn cooldown. I personally like popping this skill at the beginning of a wave I know I need to deal some damage on to pump in those little extra crit stars and make sure Melt can crit. If you're in a short battle, well, I'm going to pop that at the very beginning. Gives her a little bit of extra evasion from damage, and those crit stars end up going a long way and really help ramp up the fight that much faster. I would still recommend maxing this skill last though. That 5 to 15 critical stars can be a nice little boost, but as time goes on in a fight, you're going to be using her evade more than anything else. And that 5-turn cooldown, well, while it's nice, 7 turns ends up usually getting the job done in my experience. Those crit stars, well, with her quick type bonus, you're going to get crit stars, I promise. For Melt's second skill, I'm going to be going over the buffed version of it, which we likely won't get until July of 2022. So we've got a ways to wait. Sadistic Streak rank A+, does still have 2 of the effects that the previous one does. It increases her attack by 10 to 20% for 3 turns, at the cost of decreasing her defense by 10% for 3 turns. But when this gets its buff gang, it has a bonus where it increases Melt's critical strength by 15% when she does her normal attacks, and this activates before the damage is dealt. That is very powerful, and it really ends up turning Melt into a phenomenal critting machine. But even in its base form, this skill is very good and is Melt's primary source of damage, so I've got to recommend that you max this skill first. Melt's final skill, which we've already received an upgrade for, is Melt Virus rank EX. This decreases the NP strength of all enemies by 20 to 50% for 1 turn, and decreases the NP strength for all allies except for Melt by 50% for 1 turn. What this provides Melt is a boost to her own NP strength, a 20 to 30% boost that lasts for 2 turns. This is very, very important, this upgrade this skill got, giving that NP strength boost for 2 turns. It allows Melt a little bit of delay and a little bit of leeway. In case your enemy ends up popping a skill, or you end up getting unlucky with the amount of NP you charge, you've got another chance to hit with that Noble Phantasm. That's very, very important, and I do not recommend, in all honesty, using Melt with Gusto until you get this rank up quest taken care of. It's just that important to her kit. I cannot stress that enough. Keeping that in mind as well, I recommend maxing this skill second, mainly because I found that the NP damage boost has been very, very helpful, especially when I've used Melt on challenge quests. And speaking of that Noble Phantasm, Melt's Noble Phantasm is Sarasvati Melt Out. This deals 1200 to 2000% damage to a single enemy, and also removes all of their buffs. Unfortunately, the buffs are not removed before damage is dealt, so you really need to keep that in mind when using her. On Overcharge, this increases Melt's quick card effectiveness by 10 to 30% for 3 turns, so you want to be using this in a quick Brave chain whenever possible. If, ideally, I was able to pull without Abandon and was trying to get Melt in a good spot, I would try to get Melt to NP2, because that 1200 to 1600% boost is a huge jump, and you're going to notice that in her damage. So when looking at Melt's allies, she actually has a surprising amount of servants that end up being effective with her. This is mainly because her alter ego class is very, very good against cavalry classes. So in terms of supporters, you not only have your general caster supporters like Skahawk Scotty, who I won't mention beyond that, but also any other riders or assassins or anything like that can be very, very helpful for Melt when it comes to providing any sort of support. Odds are you're taking her to fight any specific cavalry class, so you might as well buff up your team with other cavalry classes. Now, just for the sake of expediency, because there are really so many allies that Melt can have on her team, I picked 3 freebies, 2 4-stars, and 2 5-stars to include on this list. Generally, you are looking for quick support, crit damage support, or NP gauge support when it comes to helping out Melt. So look for servants with those traits. To kick this off, I have found a ton of success with Melt in the Seraph Revival event by pairing her with Hans Christian Andersen. That boost Hans got to his Innocent Monster skill, turning it into Little Mermaid's Love, has been wonderful, making up for small bits of NP gain due to errors in my part, giving her the NP gauge she needs to use Sarasvati Melt Out. And those stars every single turn, well, that helps out quite a bit, because Hans also provides a crit damage boost, increasing Melt's overall crit damage off of her crits. American Mind's Leben still remains one of the best supportive skills for freebie servants in the entire game as well, so do not discount Hans as a supporter. Some of you watching my videos may be tired of me mentioning this guy so much recently, but I've got to give another shout out to Asclepius. Melt lacks really any ability to heal her own HP, so having somebody on the team that can do that quite a bit is very, very helpful. On top of that, he can also increase Melt's NP gauge, and with the exact same skill, remove any debuffs from her, such as the demerit that she gets off of her second skill, or remove all the demerits that is provided by her third skill. Yes, Messenger of the Snake increases the NP gauge and removes the debuffs from all allies. So with a well-placed Asclepius skill, you are getting all of the bonuses with none of the detriments. JP players are well acquainted with this lady, but I do want to give a shout out to Kichi Hogan. Now, why am I giving a shout out to Kichi Hogan? Well, she actually has a couple of skills that end up benefiting Melt, especially if you're fighting mixed cavalry waves. She has the ability to increase Melt's MP gauge and critical star gather rate with one skill, and increase all of her allies' attack and NP gain with the other. She is also herself a quick type servant as well, with the similar card setup to Melt, so you're going to be able to get off those quick brave chains if you need to, and generate a lot of critical stars for your team. Speaking of 4-star assassins, Assassin of the Nightless City can provide Melt with a ton of quick card effectiveness as well as attack boost merits. On top of that, if you're playing on JP, you have access to her upgraded first skill, Charred Bone Peony rank A+. This inflicts Nullify buff on a single enemy in addition to the defense reduction, and also inflicts burn on that enemy as well. So you're getting that defense reduction, and you are getting ways to keep your enemy from popping a pesky evade or invincible to boot. Coming up next, we've got Ryder Carmilla, who can actually provide some powerful boosts to Melt. Start with her Noble Phantasm provides Nullify buff, just like the previously mentioned Assassin of the Nightless City, but also decreases the quick resist of all enemies for 3 turns, so Melt is going to get quite a few turns of increased damage. Carmilla can also decrease the enemy's defense while draining their health, and she can also provide a unique delayed debuff called Calling Card. After 1 turn, this will drain the enemy's NP gauge by 1 and increase the NP gauge of all of Carmilla's allies by 15 to 25%. It also decreases the enemy's critical rate, which is invaluable for challenge quests. For our 5 stars, you knew we were going to mention Osakabe Hime on this video, because the abilities she's able to provide to both Quick and Buster servants are pretty hefty, and Melt, of course, has Quick and Buster cards in her primary deck, so it really ends up working out. You're also able to give Melt a defensive boost, which, if she's out of evades, that's going to help her stay alive a little longer, especially since she's going to be taking neutral damage from, honestly, the vast majority of classes. The HP boost really helps, and of course, Chiyogami Technique can increase Melt's NP gauge and critical star drop rate. Since she's primarily using quick cards, that's more stars in your bank. And a final mention here goes to Surma Yi. Supreme Mystic Code Volume N Hydrogyrum provides Melt with an invincibility buff, which she sorely lacks anyway to give herself invincibility. So, Pierce Evade, well, that's no longer a problem anymore. This same buff also increases Melt's NP gauge, making up for any errors on your part. On top of that, all of Surma Yi's abilities provide an NP gauge boost. So, anytime you're having any issues charging Melt's NP gauge, maybe you got a couple of bad card draws, maybe some skills are on cooldown, well, Surma Yi is gonna be able to provide for you. Just truly a fantastic servant. Also, she provides the ability to ignore class disadvantage when receiving damage to all allies. So if there's a mixed wave with enemies Melt would normally be weak against, well, you can still bring her and push yourself through that wave without much trouble. You just might need to rely on somebody else for the damage. I'm going to start the craft essence recommendations for Melt with 2 freebies. This is a 5-star servant after all, so having a budget pick means you don't have to roll for craft essences as well. And One Summer from the Seraph event is actually very, very good for Melt. This provides her with pretty much everything she wants. Quick card effectiveness, NP strength, and it also gives her a starting NP gauge as well. If you've got a Skahawk Scotty, well, Melt can go ahead and NP turn 1, and that can be very, very strong in short waves. For my other freebie, I'd like to mention Golden Sumo Boulder Tournament. This is just a very good craft essence for any attack-based servant. This provides you with an attack boost as well as a starting NP gauge. So much like the previously mentioned One Summer, Melt is going to be able to use her NP turn 1. If you were lucky enough to get this craft essence during the Dead Heat Summer Race event, you can rely on Midsummer Moment. This doesn't provide the NP damage boost like One Summer, but this does provide benefits in other ways. Quick card effectiveness is still there, but you also get critical strength and 3 to 4 critical stars each turn. This isn't as dramatic as a Fragment of 2030, but every little bit counts. Now, if you don't feel like you can really go without any sort of starting NP gauge, but you really still want the quick performance, you can also go ahead and pick Knights of Marines. This provides quick performance as well as a starting NP gauge boost. Honestly, even though this is a summonable craft essence, it isn't nearly as good as One Summer. A limit broken One Summer is going to be better than a base Knights of Marines in every single way. But maybe you don't have access to it, or maybe you just really value that extra 5% to quick effectiveness and extra 10% NP gauge. Either one of these can provide bonuses for you. And if you want to rely on Melt's Noble Phantasm, how can we not recommend the Black Grail? 80% NP strength at the cost of a measly 500 HP per turn? Just run Asclepius with Melt or something, you'll be fine. Taking a look at Melt's command code list, I realized something. Her Arts card is the card we can easily choose to sacrifice to boost her Noble Phantasm damage. Her arts card isn't nearly as effective as her 2 quick cards, and in all honesty, you're going to be getting most of your NP off of quick card crits rather than that single arts card. So go ahead and give Melt's arts card Da Vinci Chan. This grants NP damage up by 15%. You have to use this before you use the Noble Phantasm to make sure the damage is dealt, but gang, the trade-off is always worth it. Melt's quick cards can go either one of 2 ways. You can either choose to force her cards to draw in most of the critical stars you get to ensure that she always has that crit consistency. Otherwise, if you are very satisfied with how much draw she is getting from her critical stars because of the team you're running, you can instead focus on buffing up the critical damage of her quick cards to try and pull as much damage out of that and using them off Sarasvati Meltout as possible. If you're looking to increase critical star absorption, consider something like the one that carries Fortune. This increases the star absorption of any quick card it's engraved on by 100%. If you instead are trying to go the damaging route, look for something like, say, non-existent Phantasmal Horse. This increases critical damage by 20% when engraved on a quick card. Anything in the vein of these 2 craft essences, command codes, will do. And finally, for Melt's Buster cards, we can go ahead and go pure utility with these. You're only using them when you have to, really, for some extra damage, and providing extra ways to get rid of Melt's demerits from her other skills is going to make her a far more consistent and effective attacker. So for starters, consider White Vessel's Command Seal. This removes 1 debuff when attacking using the engraved card. It is just simple as that, and it's a very, very powerful command code. I would also like to recommend your Faithful Sheep. This kinda does the same thing. It removes a debuff when attacking using the engraved card, but also recovers 100 HP. It's not that much, but it's still an extra bonus, so I've gotta contractually say it is better than White Vessel's Command Seal. To sum it all up, gang, Melt is fantastic. She really is. She's awesome. I honestly would consider her up there with Ashiodomen as a fantastic alter ego servant. Maybe she's the best single target and Ashiodomen is the best multi-target. I think maybe we can all agree on that. At least that's just what I personally think. Melt provides powerful single target damage, her demerits on her skills are easily worked around, and she only gets better and better with her rank ups. Her rank ups end up really turning her into a powerful single target servant destroyer. If you are on the fence about any alter egos, seriously, go into your friends list and take a friend's Melt for a spin. That pun intended. I promise you will be impressed by her, and she is absolutely worth rolling for if you need an alter ego. I cannot recommend her. But of course, I want to know what you all think, so go ahead and let me know your thoughts about Melt down in the comments section below. Allies, craft essences, command codes, the whole 9 yards. If there's anything you think you can say to help somebody out in the comments, go ahead and do it. That's what we try to do here. We try to help everybody out. I would like to give a big thank you to all of the Patreons as well. Thank you for every single month choosing to support me. I really, really appreciate it. If you want to talk some FGO, you can also hit us up in the Discord server as well. A lot of cool people talking about a couple of games out there. Anyways, this is Kawaii50. I hope you all have a phenomenal day. I'll see you all in the next video.